For our lesson tonight, we're going to look at Psalm 112. And it's just a basic sermon to help us to see what God would have us to do and how we can delight in doing the will of God. You see, when things are tough, things are hard, things are boring, things are tedious, we don't like to do them, do we? It's a whole lot easier to do fun things than it is to do the boring things. So what we have to understand is that when we have the proper concept of the Word of God and what God's trying to work into our lives, then we begin to understand the delight that we can work out of our lives. Or at least delight in the things that we're working out of our lives as we try to serve our God. And this psalm really illustrates that to a great degree. But before we say, an illustration, okay? And you can probably connect with this. This is an old one. There's a story about a rich industrialist who was disturbed to find a fisherman sitting lazily beside his boat. Okay? He's just sitting. He's a fisherman, but he's sitting beside the boat. Commercial fisherman, just sitting there. He's not doing a whole lot of stuff. And the man asked him, "Why aren't you out there fishing?" "Because I have caught enough fish for today," said the fisherman. "Why don't you catch more fish than you need?" the rich man asked. "What would I do with them?" "You could earn more money," came the impatient reply. "Then you could buy a better boat so that you could go deeper and catch more fish. You could purchase nylon nets, catch even more fish, and make more money. Soon you'd have a fleet of boats and be rich like me." The fisherman looked at the guy and asked, "Then what would I do?" The industrialist said, "You could sit down and enjoy life." "What do you think I'm doing now?" Matter of perspective, isn't it? How do we get to where we're going? And what is the goal that we're headed for? Now, of course, what the person giving this illustration would want you to understand is that you can really wreck yourself and not find much delight in God if you're pursuing Him for the wrong reasons. And really pursuing things in life for the wrong reasons. God gave us this universe, gave us this world to enjoy and to delight in the things of His creation. Now, not the worldly things that we talk about that are set to destroy it, but the things that are out there, the beauty of the sunset, the beauty of flowers, and just a whole lot of things that are out there that God wants us to enjoy. But why do I have to do all this stuff and be uneasy and stressed out all the time to get to a point where then I can delight in what God has given? Why can't I go along and enjoy and delight in what God has given as I go through life? You know, we're not going to get out of this world with anything more than we brought into it. So that's very important for us to understand. Jesus said something along the lines, or we go back, Apostle Paul, if we got food and clothing and shelter, things of that nature, you know, then we begin to delight in what is around us and the people who are around us. And that's what we desire. And that's what this psalm has a lot to tell us. If happiness could be found in indulging ourselves in whatever we want, then Americans would be the happiest people in the face of the earth, wouldn't we? We throw away more than most countries use. We waste more. Hey, I'm guilty of that too. How many things have I bought that I don't use? I need to have a big yard sale. Or send it to the junk. But that's just the way life is. You know, somebody tells me I need something, I might go and buy it. But then I find out, well, he didn't know what I really needed. So blessings come to us. But think of what America is plagued with today. High rates of divorce, suicide, depression, abuse, drugs, criminal activities. What is all that indulgence done for us? It set us on the wrong path, it seems like. So Psalm 112 talks about the life of a blessed man. A blessed man. And you can go back to Psalm 1. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in it does he meditate both day and night. He'll be like a tree planted by the river who brings forth its fruit in due season. The delight that we have in serving our God. So this evening we're going to look at what makes a person blessed. What makes a person blessed? Because when we're blessed, then we find the delight, don't we? When we're blessed, our response, joy or delight. So if we find out what really makes us blessed, then we'll have that delight and we'll see the benefits of this, following this pattern, following this model. So who is this man, this blessed man? He's the man who fears the Lord. Now sometimes we get a little confused on that word fear. That doesn't mean that God is somebody that we need to run away with, or run away from, okay? To be afraid of, but means we need to have that respect for who God is. And yes, if we're doing wrong, we're going to be like Adam and Eve, and we're going to try to run and hide from God. But the blessed man, see, he doesn't do that. He fears God. He respects God. And he understands that God has that knowledge and that wisdom and wants to bring that, communicate that to each and every one of us so that we can have that blessed life. Think of the life that Adam had and Eve in the Garden of Eden until they sinned. They disobeyed God. And what happened to that blessed life? See, it wasn't fruit trees and, rainforest. Then it becomes thorns and thickets and work your tail off just to eat. God gives us that delightful path. So there are three identifying characteristics of this man who fears the Lord. Number one, enthusiastic obedience. Enthusiastic obedience. Okay? Kendra tells Baylor to take out the trash. He's supposed to be enthusiastic about that, isn't he? I said supposed to be. It doesn't mean he's going to be. But he's supposed to be. See? Because he understands that if he doesn't take out the trash, there's going to be a stink. Right? So you take out the trash, so there's no stink. But if you don't do it, if you're disobedient.
I'm sorry, Bob.
So enthusiastic obedience, he is who greatly delights in his commandments. We delight in God's commandments. Remember I said this morning, God's commandments are not grievous. They're not hard for us to follow. But they don't at all times bring us the joy that we're seeking. But see, if we're seeking the wrong joy, then we're going to have a problem. But we can delight in God's law because it's something that's good and promotes peace toward one another. And in its long run, we're blessed by it. How often can we say this even of our own children? If we really have maturity and blessing in mind, why isn't this their reaction more often? Human nature, right? Human nature. We have to really see the beauty in God's holiness and in the commandments that he gives to us, what he desires for us to do. And it's not until we buy into it. We've got to buy into it. We might say, well, I'm going to buy 1,000 shares of Apple, but I just don't know. Well, if you don't know, you're going to worry about it, right? It's not going to be a delight. But see, I believe that company's going to do well. I'm going to buy 1,000 shares in it. You buy into it, and then you want it to succeed. We don't want things to succeed that we don't buy into. So when it comes to living the Christian lifestyle, if we don't buy into it, we're not going to succeed in it. We're just going to be hit and miss with it. That's like the double-minded man from the book of James. We've got to buy into it. We've got to want to do it. What does this man again say? He doesn't find God's commandments burdensome, not a chore to obey God, but a way of life that brings blessedness. He doesn't obey grudgingly or out of necessity. You know, there are a lot of people, and because of misunderstanding of that word fear, they think that, well, you know, if I just go and do the things that God said to do, then God will owe me a place in heaven. They forget there's something else that goes with that. Obey the gospel. 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, what is it, about verse 8? To them that know God, and are the ones who are being destroyed, the ones who know not God and obey not the gospel. So if we want to be saved, it's just not about obeying the gospel. It's about knowing God and knowing that He's going to do good things for us. And that relationship with Him is going to bring about that delight in doing His will. Jesus said about the Father, "Lo, I delight to do your will, O God." We've got to delight in it. If we don't delight in it, then we're not going to be happy in it. Yeah, had a preacher friend that used to talk about Christians sometimes that looked like they were weaned on dill pickles. Sour expression. Where's the happiness? Where's the joy? Again, if you don't buy into it, if you don't love it, you're not going to be happy in it. The second thing that we look at, a characteristic, is what we call Christ-likeness. And of course, for the people in the Old Testament, there was even a Christ-likeness that they could understand. This is the way the Messiah is going to be when He comes. So you look at Him. And two particular characteristics. Number one, gracious and generous. Gracious in the sense that, hey, I was a sinner, and I needed to be saved. So who am I to tell other people or to condemn other people in the things that they're doing? You know, the important thing is to lift them up. Sometimes you have to look at the Pharisees. What did they like to do with people? Push them down and throw some burdens on them. Throw some more stuff on them. Say, condemn them. No. Gracious. Generous. Generous. And not necessarily with money, but time, other resources. When we're generous with people, they're open to us. Okay? Sometimes a smile can be generous. God wins, verse 5. Oh, I'm sorry, the blessed man wins. But again, it's just think about Jesus. What did Jesus demand in return for His going to the cross on our behalf? He didn't demand anything, did He? He said, "Come follow me. Come follow me, and I'll give you life. And I'll give it to you more abundantly. You just come follow me, keep my commandments." Okay? If you don't want to, you don't have to. We don't have to be happy. We don't have to be blessed. We don't have to if we don't want to. See, if you want that true way, true path to happiness, that's where it's at. It's in Jesus Christ. Verse 9, He has given freely to the poor. To those who are less fortunate than He is. He makes it a point, not of life, not because He has to. Understand that. It's because He wants to. That's the type of a person that He is. He's compassionate. Compassion. That calm means kind of a understanding, see, to go along with. come alongside. My companion. That's somebody you walk with, isn't it? A companion. So he's compassionate. He has passion, a care for those who are around him, who walk with him. Righteous. The upright of verse 2. Righteousness, verse 9. See? These things are there in his life. Faith rather than fear, verses 7 and 8. There are a lot of people who try to serve God out of fear. But God says he wants us to serve him in faith, trusting that his way is the right way. Oh, if I don't do that, God's going to strike me with lightning. No. No. You're just not going to have a very good life, and you may not have an afterlife to speak of. But see, walking in faith and trusting God, and then actually going out and doing his will brings about the best possible life that we could have. Positively, verses there 7 and 8, his heart is steadfast, trusting in the Lord. There we go, that singleness of mind thing again. Not a double-minded man. Yeah, I'll call him Lord, but I won't do what he says to do. That makes sense. Negatively, he will not fear evil tidings. The blessed man does not fear the enemy. The worst enemy that we can have is God. It's a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God, because our God is a consuming fire. God can do worse to us than the devil could ever hope to do. But still we don't serve him because of that, because of the fear. We serve him because he promises us life and blessings and goodness all the days of our lives. How is this man blessed by God? Well, there's prosperous posterity. Prosperous prosperity. That means he and his little family have enough, and then when his kids grow up, say, if they've learned anything, then they go through life in that same prosperous way. And it just goes on in perpetuity over and over. Influence and power. Verse 2, his children and those descendants and such are going to be mighty on the earth. Mighty on the earth. Why? Because they got their head on right. They're headed in the right direction. You don't have to worry about it. I worry about Kendra, about things. I'm not worried about the direction, because I can listen to her and I know where her heart's at. So I don't worry about that. I don't worry about menial things. But see how that works out. Abundance and contentment. God's going to give us an abundance. What does he say? Like a flour, whatever, and there it is. There's the container, and it's poured full. It's running over, pressed down. That's what he gives us. And all of that's just joy and contentment, which is being able to get through this life. There's an enduring righteousness that goes along with this blessedness of God. Talk about enduring faith this morning, right? Enduring faith by getting through those trials and tribulations of life strong and not giving in, and you come out on the other side of it, your faith is just stronger, you trust in God more. Well, there's an enduring righteousness with it also, because when we do God's will and we see good things working, we want to do God's will even more. We want to be closer to him even more. Verse 4 says that this blessed man, he's got a clear vision. A clear vision. Light arises in the darkness for the upright. Catch that. Light arises in the darkness for the upright. When things around you are going bad, the blessed man, the one who delights in God's will, there's a light there to bring him out of the darkness. Some of you probably have cataracts. And the cataracts kind of draw all that down to where there's not much light coming in. And spiritually, we can get like that also. There can be cataracts. The things of the world can kind of cram in and cut off our vision. When it cuts off the vision, it's cutting off the light, isn't it? Cuts off the spiritual light. We don't see it. When are we strongest in faith? When we see God or when we don't see God? And understand the way I'm using it. When we see God in the situation that we're in, or when we don't see God in the situation we're in. I'd rather see God in the situation that I'm in so I can know the way out. Because when I think God isn't there, the doubt is going to get me. The doubt's going to get me. So there's a clearness of vision, the light that is there. What is true about a man who walks in darkness? He stumbles about, right? He stumbles about, and he's getting his way, and he strikes a toe on something, and it hurts, or he bumps a knee on something, and it hurts. And spiritually, think how that plays out. When we're not focused on God, and we stumble in that darkness, and spiritually, we're banging knees and stubbing toes all the time. And then turn around and blame God, right? That's the way we do it. And we blame God because, where was your light, God? It's there. You just didn't avail yourself to it. Even in tough times, the righteous have the light of the Lord's presence and guidance to be able to get through the situations. Now, there's successful outcomes here. Look at it. Overall success. Verse 5, the very first part of that, it is well with the man. How many of you like that song? It is well with my soul. Okay, our conscience had better be exercised rightly to be able to sing that song. And what's the first thing that we're going to have done in order to sing that song? Self-examination. If we're not willing to examine ourselves to see if we are in the faith, to see if we're measuring up, we better not sing that song. Because we're singing blasphemy if we don't look at ourselves. And then an honest look, an honest evaluation. If we get into it and we do the right thing, the repentance, whatever is needed, then we can say, it is well with my soul. And sing it and mean it so that we show that we delight in what God has done for us. There's critical success. He will maintain his cause in judgment. Verse 5, the second part of that. What does that mean? It means when the enemy is tearing you down, you can say, wait a minute, I'm righteous. Now, not because I say I'm righteous, but here's what I've done. God's the one who's going to be the judge. And if we're right with God, it doesn't matter what men say about us. He will be found successful in the critical battles that arise. Now, what's the alternative? He will guide his affairs with discretion. Discretion. How's that? Because he knows the difference between right and wrong. He knows the difference between good and evil, and he makes the right choice. That's discretion. And then there's lasting success because of it. Verse 6, first part of that, he will never be shaken. That's kind of like Psalm 1, right? Be like a tree planted by the river, and what? He'll never be moved. Never. And then there's that final word, the excellent reputation and lasting legacy that comes, that the blessed man has. The righteous will be remembered forever. Verse 6, the second part of that. Going to be remembered forever. A lot of bad people get remembered, don't they? Hitler, Stalin, Jesse James. Go down the list, right? A lot of bad people get remembered. Who's going to be remembered in heaven for eternity? The good people. The blessed people. The ones who walk according to God's commandments, trust in Him. They're the ones going to be there. The heart anchored in faith is the heart of the blessed man, rather than a heart that is adrift with fear. Verses 7 through 10 say some things positively. He's anchored in faith. He trusts in God. He's looked at the testimony of God, and he looks at the testimony of the world. He's looked at the arguments that the world has against God, and he says, you know what? I believe God. I trust in God. I'm going with the guy who was raised from the dead. How powerful is that? Very powerful, isn't it? I'm going with the guy who's raised from the dead because he overcame it all, and he is that pathfinder for us, so to speak. He's the one out there to lead us. The blessed man's heart is upheld. God responds to his faith and upholds his heart in all those terrible situations, the trials and tribulations we talked about this morning. Now, negatively, saying, he's not adrift in fear. He will not fear. No such thing for him as evil things. Yeah, they're evil, but they don't come upon him as evil. He recognizes them, picks them out and says, I'm staying away from that. That's going to lead me somewhere I don't want to go. I'm staying away from it. That's the type of life he lives. Again, Romans 8:28, we know that God's working all things together for good to those that love Him, to those who are called according to His purpose. It's just not loving God. It's being called to His purpose. The purpose that He has for each and every one of us to trust and obey. Delight in the law of the Lord. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. John chapter 14, verse 27. Jesus about to face arrest, trial, torture, crucifixion. And He tells us, let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. Come out good for Him. It'll come out good for us. See, heaven will be the ultimate prosperity and blessing showered on the righteous. The pleasures of the flesh will not last forever. In fact, the Bible tells us they're fleeting, aren't they? They're here a little bit, and then they are gone. But the word of the Lord endures forever. And the people who trust in the word of God and obey His will, keep His commandments, follow Jesus, and delight in doing His will, they're going to endure for eternity also. Thank you for your time. The lesson is yours. If you're in need tonight, we ask you to come. Find a seat up here in the front. We'll help you out. If you would, please come while together we stand and sing the invitation song.